King Lagerfeld here, back with another video reaction. And today we're going to be doing another MrBallen video. This one is another episode of Top 3 Places You Can't Go and People Who Went Anyways. I love this series because, you know, it just makes you appreciate, you know, the good decisions that you've made, because the people who are in these episodes, they just make some of them are just, you know, they're unlucky and they get caught up in accidents. But a lot of them, you know, it's choices that they've made that cause them to end up, you know, in these situations. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get into this episode. I don't know what volume this is. It might be number 2, number 3, I don't know. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get into it and see what happens to the people who went to places they shouldn't have gone. Let's go ahead.
Today, we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please replace the like button's hairspray with Gorilla Glue adhesive spray. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Blind spot.
On February 24th, 2019, a woman arrived at a ceramics factory in Hubei province in China. She walked through the front door into the main office, where she saw a desk attendant. She informed them she was a quality control inspector, and she was there that day to inspect their vehicles. The attendant was accustomed to their company being periodically inspected, and so she asked the woman if she needed any help, and the woman said, "Nope, I'm just going to roam around your building, check what I need to check, and then I'll be out of here." And so the attendant told her that was totally fine, and if she needed anything, just come back and she would help her. And so the inspector thanked her and then turned around and went out the front door and checked the vehicles in the front lot of the ceramics factory. And then after she was done, she went back into the main office. She walked past the attendant and out the back door into the very active yard, where all day long these huge bulldozers would move around thousands of pounds of sand. And so the inspector walked out that back door and she scanned the yard, and she saw there were 2 bulldozers doing just that, moving all around. And then off to the left side, there was a dump truck that seemed to be stationary. And so very confidently, she just walked right into the yard and made her way over to that dump truck. And then when she got there, she flagged the driver down and said she was an inspector.
Oh, this is a real photo?
And so the driver helped her by turning on and off signals and moving back and forth. And then at some point, the inspector needed the dump truck driver to back up a significant distance. She needed to watch him do that. And so she, the inspector, backed away from the dump truck until she was in the middle of the yard, standing right in front of this parked bulldozer. What happens next is all caught on video. So as she's standing there and she's watching the dump truck back up right in front of her, the bulldozer driver right behind her turns on the machine and immediately lurches forward. Now, the driver of this bulldozer did not see the woman, and she was in his blind spot right in front of the bucket of his bulldozer. And he was not aware there was somebody on foot walking around the yard. It's an extremely dangerous place to be on foot. And so he goes right into her and he knocks her backwards. She falls into the bucket. She starts screaming, but no one can hear her. It's so loud. And the driver drives the bucket directly into a pile of sand and scoops up thousands of pounds of sand that come down directly on this woman.
So now she's completely buried.
Crushed by all this sand. And then the driver, completely oblivious, lifts the bucket up, turns around and drives across the yard and dumps.
Why would they have someone inspect during work hours? That makes no sense.
The vibrating sand crusher is exactly what it sounds like. It pulverizes bits of rock and stone and grinds them down into a very fine powder. The machines come in various shapes and sizes, but this one inside of this ceramics factory was a top-loaded version, and it basically looked like a big dumpster with this big opening at the top. And so these bulldozer drivers would take these clumps of sand and they would dump it in this opening at the top of this bin. And then once they dumped their sand into the opening, the machine would vibrate, causing the sand to filter its way down towards the bottom of the machine, where there were these big, vicious metal claws that constantly smashed together.
Oh
and
my
would just completely
goodness.
obliterate
Oh.
anything that passed through them. In the
Are
video,
you
when the driver
serious?
dumps his bucket load into the sand crusher, you can actually see the woman falling in, but then she immediately jumps into action and begins trying to pull herself up and out of this pile. And at some point, she gets most of her upper body out, and she waves, and she gets the attention of the driver who's just dumped her into the sand crusher. And the driver, he stops right away. You can see the vehicle lurch to a stop.
Okay.
He leaps out and he starts running over to the sand crusher. But as he's running over, this woman who's waving and waving, at some point her leg or some other part of her gets grabbed by those jaws at the bottom of the machine. And she's pulled slowly down into the sand crusher and disappears under the sand. When this happens, the driver is frantic and he's screaming for other people in the factory to come over and help. And at some point, the others inside, they realize there's an emergency and they all run over. But when they realize what's happened, that someone has fallen into the sand crusher, they all just stop and stand there because they know there's nothing they can do. The woman was gone.
I mean, they couldn't turn it off or something, or there's no...
In June of 2015, 45-year-old James Young landed his dream job. For the last several years, James had been a fifth-grade teacher in East Canton, Ohio, teaching special education. And while he loved his job and he loved the kids he worked with, he had always had his eye on becoming a guidance counselor for high school students. In 1988, James had actually graduated from East Canton, Ohio High School, and ever since his graduation, he had wanted to come back to the school and help the next generation of East Canton students prepare for their lives as adults. And a guidance counselor was designed to do just that. James had applied for the job before, but every time he applied, they would tell him that while he was qualified, there just wasn't a spot open for him. However, at the end of that school year, he was told a guidance counselor spot had opened up at the high school and the job was his if he wanted it. And so, of course, James said, yes, I'll take the job. And immediately he told his mother about this amazing news. And his mother, who lived only a block away from him in East Canton, Ohio, would say that her son was so ecstatic about the job that normally when summer break was coming up, he would really look forward to that time off from school. But now that he had this new job to look forward to, he was already anxious for the summer to be over. James was a single man, but he was not lonely. He had a number of very close, lifelong friends that he would spend virtually all of his off time with. And that summer, he did just that. He went out with his friends, they explored all of Ohio and outside surrounding areas. They spent a lot of time outside and they enjoyed each other's company. Towards the end of the summer, James and his friends knew it was time to schedule their annual trip to Cedar Point. Cedar Point is an amusement park about 2 hours northwest of East Canton, Ohio.
I hate roller coasters.
Right on the shores of
I can't do those.
And it's known
too
for
high.
its incredible roller coasters, of which they had 17, making them the park with the second
and
most
I'll be
roller
on
coasters in the
0.
world. Every summer since James could remember, he and his very close friends would make
not
a
do
trip
roller
out to
coasters
Cedar Point,
at all.
usually at the end of the summer to kind of cap off their vacation. After looking at their calendar, they decided that the best day to go would be Thursday, August 13th. This would give the group of friends one more fun thing to do before the following week James started his new job. So on the morning of that Thursday,
What happened?
the friends piled into a car and they made the 2-hour commute up to Cedar Point. And as soon as they got there, they went inside, they grabbed a map, and they began systematically hitting as many rides as they possibly could. And so by 4:30 p.m., they were totally exhausted. They'd been on virtually every ride. And so they were about to call it a day when James and his friends decide, hey, let's go on one more ride before we pack it in. And so
No, let's just leave.
And they realized they haven't gone on one of their favorite rides. It was called
if they would have just left,
not Cedar Point.
if they would have just left,
but it was their fastest.
nothing would have happened. Whatever happened.
57 miles per hour. Passengers are seated 4 across with their feet dangling below them in these suspended chairs with the big harness that comes down. And then once the ride starts, they're brought slowly up this 137-foot hill. And then at the top, they pause before being dropped down into this nearly 4,000-foot long track that spins them upside down 6 different times. So James and his friends, they closed up their map.
People really think that's fun?
They got in line, and by 4:50 p.m.,
that's not fun
they made it to
at
the
all.
front of the line.
That's terrifying.
They got into their seats, their harness came down, and then the ride started. And they were pulled up to the top of the hill. They paused, and then they were launched down the track. And for 2 minutes, they zipped and zagged and looped-de-looped all through this track. And then it was just suddenly over. And the friends had a great time on the ride. Except James realized about halfway through the ride, when they were upside down, his phone and wallet had come out of his pockets. And he actually saw them fall down towards the ground. And although he didn't see exactly where they landed, he had a pretty good idea of where they were. And so after they got off the ride, the friends were kind of talking about how much fun it was. And James said to them, hey, hey, I lost my cell phone and wallet. Will you guys come with me while I go look for them? And so the friends agreed. They left the Raptor station and they walked down the paved path until they were in front of this fence that said no trespassing. And so James gets up to the fence and he's looking inside of this fenced-in area, and he sees right in the middle of this restricted area is his phone and his wallet. And before James's friends could tell him not to do this, he had climbed over the fence and entered into this restricted area.
You can't go,
he ran
and
over
you
to
went
his phone and
anyway.
his wallet, he picked it up, and then when he stood back up again, the next wave of Raptor riders came blazing through the area, and the underside, the steel underside of the ride, hit James right in the back of the head. He never saw it coming.
Oh my God.
Threw him forward, he landed on his face, and immediately the park officials saw this happen. They stopped the ride, but the riders on board the Raptor, they didn't know what was going on, and so they're stopped on the ride. They're looking down, and they hear people screaming, and they look down, and they see there's this man, James, lying face down on the ground with blood pooling around his head.
I'm sure. I'm pretty sure that thing was going fast.
Specifically to keep
I'm surprised his head is still on.
Close to this one low point in the Raptor ride where the ride can come through and it can hit you. And so medical workers, they rush over, they hop over the fence, they get to James, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead at the scene. That day, Cedar Park was
I'm not surprised
for James's death, but after reviewing the footage and talking to witnesses, the investigation was closed and they determined that the park was not at fault. James, despite being a very intelligent and sensible man,
it's so avoidable.
had a brief lapse in judgment, and it unfortunately cost him his life. Today, Cedar Park is still open for business, and the Raptor ride is still operational.
See, that's one bad decision.
On August 14th, 2012, Celestino Cervantes picked up 28-year-old Victor Diaz for work. Celestino was an expert roofer, and he had just hired Victor to come on his crew and help him with a particular job. This was going to be Victor's first day as a roofer, but for the past 10 years he had worked in construction, so he was familiar with the operation. The two men arrived at their job site in San Antonio, Texas around 8 a.m. that morning. They were in charge of putting a new roof
boiler
on a
house
115-year-old building that was being redeveloped.
That sounds
into a
dangerous.
fancy steakhouse. Until 2001, this building had been used by a brewing company to house their enormous boilers. As such, this building was referred to as the boiler house. Protruding from the boiler house roof was this large metal duct that was 15 feet long and almost looked like a covered walkway, and it connected to the side of this huge smokestack. This duct and smokestack used to be how the built-up condensation inside the boiler house was able to travel up and out of the building. When the two roofers got out of their truck, Celestino told Victor to take his tools and make his way up to the roof of the boiler house and get to work, and that he had a few things he had to do down on the ground floor, but he would be up to check on him in a little bit. Celestino turned around and was fiddling with his equipment inside of the truck while Victor made his way into the building and out of sight. An hour and a half later, Celestino went up to the roof to check on Victor, but he couldn't find Victor anywhere and he couldn't find his tools anywhere. So Celestino went back down into the main section.
Where are you, Victor?
Where other contractors that were working on this renovation were, and he began asking them, hey, have you seen this guy, Victor? He works with me, I can't find him, and no one had seen him. And so Celestino's thinking to himself, well, I guess Victor must have left. But that didn't really make any sense because Victor didn't have a vehicle and he didn't live nearby. But Celestino's thinking, you know what, maybe somebody came and picked him up. Now, unfortunately, Victor did not carry a cell phone, so nobody had any way of getting directly in contact with him.
No
so
phone,
Celestino leaves the building
no ride.
and he calls Victor's brother and he asks him, have you seen Victor? Do you know where he might have gone? And Victor's brother says, no, I haven't seen him since this morning when he left with you. So Victor's brother began calling around to friends and family and asked them if they had seen Victor, but nobody knew where he was. So for the rest of the day, Celestino and the rest of Victor's friends and family, they went out looking for Victor at the job site and around the surrounding areas, but there was just no sign of him. And so that night, Victor's brother went to the police to file a missing person report. But the police told him that it was really too early to file a report because Victor was an adult and there was no sign of foul play, and that he should just come back in a day or two if Victor still has not shown up. 2 days go by and Victor has still not shown up. So Victor's
that makes no sense. Like, if somebody's missing, just look for him. Like,
missing person report. We don't know where he is. No one can get in touch with him. We need your help.
They could have saved his life.
She spoke to told her that she still needed to wait another 5 days to process this request. It would turn out this was just not true. It was a mistake. There was no arbitrary waiting period to file a missing person report. So without any help from the police, Victor's friends and family and co-workers spent the next several days scouring San Antonio, scouring the job
I mean,
site,
I don't know if he's dead or not, but
handing out flyers and asking people if they'd seen
I mean,
him,
if they would have
but
worked
no one
sooner,
had.
nothing would have happened,
By
I'm
Monday,
sure.
the following week, so 6 days after Victor has gone missing, his family had printed out dozens of these huge posters with his face on them and a number to call if you had any information about him, and their plan was to distribute them the following morning all over San Antonio. But the following morning, before they headed out, they got a call. Victor had been found. 7 days earlier, when Celestino told Victor to head inside and make his way to the roof and begin the project, Victor had gotten his tools, gone inside, he made his way up the stairwell to the second floor, and then he made a series of odd decisions. Instead of making his way to the access door and climbing his way up to the roof, he went to the far side of the second floor where there were all these wooden barriers preventing people from going any farther. He climbed over
But
all
he
these
went
barriers,
anyway.
and he reached the entrance to that huge duct where the condensation used to go. And so from his perspective, he would
Nobody told you to go there. Why would you go there?
Completely pitch black. Because it connected to that smokestack, and the smokestack
So
was
avoid
totally sealed
just
off. But despite not having any idea where this tunnel goes, and it clearly not being the place Celestino told him to go, Victor decides to just get into this tunnel, which required bending over. Because it was only 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide. So he gets inside of this tunnel, and he begins shuffling his way deeper and deeper into this tunnel until he reaches the end of the tunnel where it actually connects into the smokestack. Now, at the top of this duct, where it connects to the smokestack, there wasn't a grate or bars or any sort of barrier that would stop you from spilling into the smokestack. And because it was totally pitch black, Victor, when he made it to the edge of that duct, he just kept on walking and fell 20 feet down to the bottom of the smokestack. And so in total darkness, Victor, who was probably badly hurt from the fall, began feeling around the inside of the chimney looking for a way out. And he eventually found a hatch that was big enough for him to fit through, but when he felt up against it, he realized it was locked from the outside and it wouldn't even budge. He couldn't even get light to come in through a crack. It was totally sealed off. And that was the only way out of the smokestack unless he could get back up to the duct, but there was no way to do that.
Yeah, not 20 feet up.
Screaming for help, but he was encased in thick brick, and so his sound wouldn't have traveled. It would have been completely muffled. Plus, the smokestack was fairly far away from the job site.
All you had to
very
do,
noisy as it is.
All you had to do was
just no
follow the path he told you to go.
And the smokestack and the duct were not part of the renovation, and so there was absolutely no foot traffic over around the smokestack. He was completely alone, no one knew he was there, and there was no way out. 7 days after Victor fell into the smokestack, workers
a whole week
site, they noticed this huge swarm of flies over around the base of the smokestack. There were so many flies over there, they decided they had to go investigate. And so as they walked closer and closer to the smokestack, they were hit with this overwhelming stench of death and decay. And then when they got to the smokestack, they could see the flies were centralized on that hatch at the bottom. And so they cut the lock, they opened it up, and inside they found Victor's body. And they saw his hands were badly bloodied and bruised, and they were pressed up against the inside of the hatch, indicating in his final moments he was desperately trying to open that hatch and save himself, but there was just no way to do that. Although no one knows this for sure, it's believed Victor confused the condensation duct with the access point to the roof. So that's gonna do it, guys. If you found the secret...
I mean, that is just horrific. I mean, the only person that I really can feel completely bad for is the first lady, the inspector. I mean, why would they even schedule her to work to inspect the place when they're in the middle of work? I mean, clearly, like they said, you can't hear anyone, you can barely see anybody because you're up in these big trucks with the big claws in the front, so you can't really see if somebody's walking in front of you. So why would they even have her do that during work hours? I mean, or at least tell the workers that somebody's coming by, so just look out for someone that could be walking through the workspace. So I mean, that was just completely irresponsible, I think, on the company's part. The second and third one, I mean, they were warned. I mean, they were at places that they knew they shouldn't have been. I mean, the guy in the second story, you know, I'm pretty sure he didn't expect it to go that badly where he would end up dead. I mean, he thought he would just, go in, get the phone, walk out, and, whatever. I understand that, but still, you had warning signs. They told you that not to enter that area. And plus, you could have had a park employee. You could have told one of them, hey, I dropped my phone and my wallet. Can I possibly get someone to come and get this for me? Like, why would you hop the fence on your own? I mean, that made no sense. I mean, tell somebody who would know what to do and when to do it. Clearly, I mean, I don't know. And then the third one, that was just insane. He just went all through the building into odd places that he shouldn't have been. And, so that was avoidable. He didn't tell you to go through any tunnel. He just said go to the roof. And I'm pretty sure as a construction site, there were signs up there, or there should have been, but I'm pretty sure at some point it felt odd to him that maybe he felt he was going in the wrong direction. So yeah, the last two stories are completely avoidable. The first lady, she had, that was just a terrible mistake, I think, on the company's part, but just all around tragic, and I hope all of them, are resting in peace, just terrible. But anyway, guys, another MrBallen video as usual. Let me know what you guys thought about this down in the comments below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, be blessed, be your best, and keep down the stress. Bye, guys.